Heidi's story is one of hitting rock bottom and then discovering something she didn't know she had: belief in herself. After years of illness, loss, and perfectionism driving her life, she found herself stripped of everything that once defined her. And in that kitchen moment, she chose to trust her own body and begin again. This episode is about what unfolds when survival gives way to presence, when perfectionism loosens its grip, and when we finally believe that healing is possible.
And I asked this question of myself, which is, what am I believing about my ability to heal? And I had never asked myself that question in all these years. And by now, it had been 10 years that I had been sick. And I sat there, and the answer was actually that I'm believing I'm not going to heal and that I'm going to continue to get worse. And I thought, how can I heal if I don't believe I can heal? And in that moment, I said, I'm going to vow to believe in myself and believe in my body's ability to heal. And to be honest, I never really believed in myself very much my whole life. I always felt not enough.
I'm Matt Gilhooly, and this is The Life Shift, candid conversations about the pivotal moments that have changed lives forever. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Life Shift podcast. I am here with Heidi. Hello, Heidi.
Hi, Matt.
Thank you for wanting to be a part of the Life Shift. It has been this journey that everyone has heard me say now that I just never could have expected for myself. And it's been really like a healing journey. And I'm so happy to do it every time, even when the stories are challenging and hard, because it just gives me another element of the human experience to kind of like either put in my pocket or reconsider or reflect on in the way that my life has unfolded since my life shift. So thank you for just wanting to be a part of this.
Thank you so much for having me, Matt. I'm thrilled to be here.
For anyone that is listening for the first time because you are on, the Life Shift podcast exists because of my own personal experience. So I'm kind of drawing from that as I created this show, and now it's really expanded into all sorts of different things. But when I was 8, my dad had to sit me down to tell me that my mom had been killed in a motorcycle accident. And my parents were divorced, lived thousands of miles away, different states. At that moment in time, it felt like everything about my life was no longer possible because I lived with my mom full time and I went to school up in Massachusetts, and like all my family was all up there. My dad lived in Georgia. And at that time, like, now my primary parent's gone. I have to move somewhere else. I have to start a different school. So like all the safety that I had in my life was now ripped from me. And this was late 80s, early 90s. People weren't talking about grief out loud. They weren't talking about how to help a kid through it, right? He'll be fine. He's a kid. He'll bounce right back. And so I saw that people needed that from me and kind of just pushed everything down. And all along, I was wondering, do other people have these like line in the sand moments in which like everything changes in like a split second? And it turns out they do. And they have a lot of them, and we have them throughout our lives if we're lucky in some ways not so lucky. But these life shift moments, I've come to realize, aren't always dramatic. There's a lot of people that choose to do things in different ways and change their lives. And so it really has been this wonderful journey of hearing human stories, really, and how resilient we are and how we can move through things, even if they're really messy and hard. So that's what the life shift is about. And I'm looking forward to hearing what we're going to talk about today for you. I know you have many life shift moments, but we're going to talk about one in particular.
I do have one great big giant, but it was years in the making. So it was not a split second.
It's funny because I've heard people tell these stories about how they had been kind of working towards something big, and they've like they haven't taken that big leap. But then all of a sudden they read this book for like the third time, and this one sentence stood out to them. And all of a sudden it was like everything changed, the perspective changed and stuff. And those things are so fascinating to me as well. But also there's a build. But I think there's also, I bet if we dug down deep enough, we could probably find a little moment that pushed you a little over the edge, but we won't challenge you to do that today. Before we get into your story, maybe you can tell us who Heidi is in 2025. How do you identify? How do you show up in the world?
I show up in the world as a person who is really intentional about how I want to show up, which is a being rather than this list of things that I have to do, although I do have that as a big part of my past. I try to be as present as I can with every conversation, with what I do, walking in nature, being present, being mindful. And every day I set intentions to live for my highest good, for the highest good of all. Does that always happen? No, I'm human. But I have this sense of awareness that awoke in me around through this journey. And it has put me into this space where I just feel really grounded, living in alignment with who I am, which is a caring person, a person who feels connected to something so much bigger than me, and a person who wants to make a difference in the world and share my story and my experience in hopes that it can help open the door for other people to change their lives. And as lofty as it sounds, I believe if we can connect with ourselves at a deep, deep level, it makes us able to connect with other people and to our world. And I feel like this is what we need right now in such a big way. And to be a part of that is exciting. So I'm a person I'm feeling all the emotions, I think, at a much greater level because I've connected with this depth of myself. But it makes the joy like way up here, but it also makes the pain really visceral. But I wouldn't trade it.
Living with such intention, does it, now that you're in practice and now that you're in the zone, maybe, is it hard? Like, does it take a lot of work to do that? Because I think that someone that just kind of lives life by the seat of their pants, they're not really thinking, there's not a lot of work. It's not that
Yeah.
hard to do. So I'm curious if on the
Yeah.
other side it's hard.
It's There are definitely ebbs and flows. So, to give you an example, I was living out patterns. We all are. We're all on automatic patterning. 95%. I've seen 40 to 95% of the time, we're living out automatic patterns where in our subconscious, it's some other thing, culture, something making our choices for us. And feeling trapped at times, locked in at times, or like I'm going to lose it because this is a trigger. So the difference for me is yes, it's more about being conscious and knowing that I have a choice in every response to everything. Like I was mountain biking last weekend and my husband, I was tired. He knows all these trails, but we've never been on them. We're climbing for an hour and 45 minutes and it's like a mountain and I'm like off the bike walking back on the bike. It's super technical and I'm just like, oh my god, I hate this. Oh wait, but I'm in nature and it's so beautiful. So it was this tug of war between this automatic, god damn it, why are we here, like I just wanted an easy ride today, and wait a minute, that doesn't do me any service to say how tired I am or frustrated. And then I was frustrated that I was frustrated. So it was this whole tug of war within. And when I just said, you know what, accept reality right now, there is no turning around. This is a one-way trail up and a one-way trail down. My husband isn't going to ride my bike for me. So I have to do it. So I have a choice. I can either continue to get pissed off and escalate and blame him, or I can say, oh my God, there's a million larches out here. This is gorgeous. I'm going to breathe. I'm going to have gratitude. And I'm going to say, I can do hard things. And it changes the whole experience.
So it's kind of like a reframing in a way as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, what do I choose? Do I choose to be mad, or do I choose to say, wait a second, I'm actually out here. My body can do this, which in my story, you'll hear this is huge for my body to be able to do this. And it's a reframing, but it's also a choice of how do I want to respond given here's the situation. It isn't going to change. I need to be that change. So it's being aware that I do have a choice and I'm not going to just waste my energy on getting mad, and setting the intention for staying on my bike and not being on the ground.
To my original question, it's kind of like it's the harder way for those of us on autopilot to actually stop and reflect and be able to sit in that moment, because I think, like you said, in a subconscious level, like so many of us are just kind of living out these patterns. For me, growing up, it was very much like what I call society's checklist that was driving whatever I was doing. I felt like I was making those choices, but I don't think I was making them in alignment of what I wanted. I was making them in alignment what I thought other people needed or wanted from me. But I think that all stems to an abandonment feeling of when my mom died. It felt like my mom abandoned me, so I didn't want anyone else to do it, so I had to make everyone happy. So like if I take it all apart, all of that patterning was just out of fear, really, of,
And
someone leaving.
survival.
Right.
You don't want, you're
But it was
eight, you don't
easy.
want to be, right. And we don't like discomfort.
Right.
we
Yeah.
don't.
So if I
We
chose
don't.
something that I wanted, it would feel like, oh, I have to do this extra great because I have to prove now that because I chose a different route, it was great. But no, so that makes sense. And I want to dig into your story because it will probably make more sense to the rest of us as to how you got this way and why you choose to live this way, which sounds very fulfilling and also frustrating at times. So maybe you can kind of paint the picture of your life leading up to kind of the main moments that we're going to, center today around, and what changed the before version of Heidi to kind of that life shift moment.
So my mom had lymphoma, and in 2000 got a bone marrow transplant. And I grew up as a doer. Like I was always in motion. And when she had her bone marrow transplant, I took that to mean like I got to squeeze the marrow out of every day because I don't know when my last day will be. So I filled my schedule. I had several jobs. I was a competitive athlete at a house. I was doing projects. I was just, from the moment I woke up in the morning till the moment I went to bed, I was just in motion. And I always had this scarcity of time because I'm never going to be able to fit everything in. I was late to a lot of things because I was like, oh, I can get this and this done on the way to this. And it didn't work out because there'd be traffic or whatever. But I lived like this for years, and I really thought this is what life is about. This is living. And then I started to get some chronic injuries that wouldn't heal, but I would kind of see a PT, get acupuncture, and keep going. And then I started getting chronic illnesses that would level me. And I would kind of patch myself up, try to keep going, but then I would get leveled again. And I gradually had to pare down. I pared down with work. I quit racing my bike, and then I quit riding my bike. And then I stopped doing things with friends and stopped traveling. And in 2016, I lost my dog to cancer. And then 2 months after that, my sister committed suicide. And then I had a wedding. I got married 6 weeks after that. A year later, I moved in with my parents for 3 months for my mom's last 3 months to help her get on hospice and just spend the last few months with her. But all those events were super stressors that created this kind of storm in my body, just everything that had been harboring that I'd been trying to kind of tamp down over the years. It became like a 5 alarm fire. Eventually in 2021, I lost my career. I lost the ability to drive. Like daily tasks seemed like mountains. I couldn't find words. I couldn't think. I was leaving the stove on. I was so alone. And I had been resisting my life because I felt like I was always this high achiever, this athlete, this robust person. And I had treated a lot of patients. I'm an occupational therapist and I've treated thousands of patients, but I treated people who had chronic illness and they lost everything. And I was like, that isn't me. I'm not, and then I looked at all the things that I was losing. I mean, my husband and I met racing our bikes. A huge part of our life is active outdoor things. We did a bike trip in New Zealand. We'd go, you know, all over riding and racing our bikes. And I couldn't even ride my bike. I could barely walk around the block. And so there was so much that I had lost in my relationship, in addition to my family. And it was this moment that I remember, and I didn't have a doctor, I didn't have a diagnosis, I didn't have a treatment plan.
Were you kind of ignoring all those things?
No, I went to a
Okay.
ton of doctors
Okay.
and
So
nobody could
they just
help me.
couldn't figure it out.
They were making
Okay.
it me worse with every treatment. And I was really scared because I have a high risk for cancer, for breast cancer, and that's what killed my mom in like 5 months. And I knew if this is the path, I know I'm going to get cancer and I'm going to die. Like I just know and I'm terrified. And I have my dad who's terrified and my husband is like, maybe this is how you'll be because you've been sick for so long. I mean, it was in my wedding vows, like that he takes care of me. I mean, it's crazy. It was so anyway, he stayed though, which is great, which a lot of people's spouses don't. But I was sitting in my kitchen. I had no one other than my dad and my husband, but they didn't understand, like what you talk about. Nobody gets it unless they're there. And I asked this question of myself, which is what am I believing about my ability to heal? And I had never asked myself that question in all these years. And by now it had been 10 years that I had been sick. And I sat there, and the answer was actually that I'm believing I'm not going to heal and that I'm going to continue to get worse. And I thought, how can I heal if I don't believe I can heal? And in that moment, I said, I'm going to vow to believe in myself and believe in my body's ability to heal. And to be honest, I never really believed in myself very much my whole life. I always felt not enough.
Is that why you were kind of a doer?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And perfectionist, all
Yeah.
that.
People
That was me.
pleaser.
Yep. That was me. And I had no idea what it would look like, but I committed to doing it. And interestingly, you said you might have had little nudges. I had that voice in 2011 that was a very small voice that said, you have the power to heal inside of you. And I was like, okay, but I don't know how it works. I don't know what to do. And I ignored it because the voice of doubt was so much bigger. I knew from all the nervous system stuff and all the somatics and all the things that I was doing a ton of things. And I always felt like they felt prescriptive and rote. And there was a piece that I knew was missing, and that was me. And so that became kind of my shift. I created rituals I put sticky notes everywhere, believe every time I had fear tell me I wouldn't get better, I stopped it with belief. And gradually, I began to challenge the stories and the beliefs around my illness. I got some momentum and I started to then kind of uncover the layers that I had built up over my lifetime of not enough and of the vulnerabilities that I tried so hard to compensate for. In the meantime, I was also working on acceptance of everything, the moment, the circumstance, and the parts of me that are hard to love. And I met them with the compassion I would a friend. And over years of doing this work, and it is work, what has unfolded is this ally inside of me that is what I call my unshakable me, because it's given me the strength and the resilience to kind of live in alignment, to know who I am and to live being that person that I have found. It's like I've met myself for the first time and I'm 55, It's crazy.
Yeah, but it
But
it
I
makes
love it.
sense. Yeah, no, and I think it's beautiful that, I mean, not beautiful that you got to that place, but maybe that's the place that you needed to be to kind of shake out that. I think a lot of people will listen and relate to maybe not the chronic illness part, but the perfectionism piece that keeps us from believing in ourselves, believing that we're good enough, choosing the things that we know we can do well, but not the things that we really want to do,
Yeah.
choosing, the safe things and pushing other things down, not letting other people see anything that shows weakness. Like, I think so many of us that have these tendencies to feel we need to be perfect can relate to this story. And you're certainly not the first person to kind of tell this story. And please forgive me if this sounds wrong, but I don't mean it in any way. But tell a story like this in which you had trauma after trauma after trauma, injury, this, like all the things, and kind of going to this whole body keeps the score kind of element of your
For
body
sure.
just holding on because you're not processing it because you're a perfectionist. So you don't want to move through any of those things that might make you look less than, right? Because we're assuming that
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
admit I need help grieving the loss of a pet, which I just experienced in the last year, like nobody talks
Yeah.
about it.
It's huge.
It's huge. And we've all been kind of programmed to the idea that, oh, it's just a pet. And so then we feel this guilt and we feel like, why am I? So the whole thing, like you had all this stuff tamped down, and then it was about really you just like sitting and seeing yourself for the first time and going like, what the hell are you doing, Heidi?
Well, yeah, and it's almost you know, like I'm covered with mud, but I'm like, I'm super clean. I don't have any mud on me. It's like, Heidi, you've lost everything, almost everything. Just admit it. Quit resisting it. And when you stop resisting, it's so freeing. I also think too, okay, to have a narrative for 52 years of I'm not enough, and then one day, line in the sand, I am enough, isn't enough. I think it's like even now, still, I have to, it's like an organism, this enoughness that I have to feed every day with love and belief and compassion and kindness to myself. And then, you know, pull the weeds of negative thoughts and intrusive thoughts. And when I, screw up and I don't live according to the intention that I want to, that's okay. I'm human. Learn from it, choose different next time. Or sometimes I do know and I'm going down that path anyway. But it's just realizing that, yeah, seeing perfectionism for what it is and realizing that I think, like alcoholism, it's something you're always recovering from.
Yeah. It's a lot of work.
It's daily. It's daily, you know. I want to do a good job. I mean, it's different from alcoholism. I don't want to, but it's almost like an addiction in that it's something that I've been doing my whole life, and to then say, okay, I'm not going to do it anymore. I have to be really intentional about it, and aware, and say, okay, I don't have to keep, you know, scrubbing that till it's the stain is gone, it looks fine, or whatever it is, you know. It's like done is better than perfect.
Yeah. It's
I love
it's
that
a hard
saying.
one.
It is.
I think what you when you said the awareness and acknowledgement piece, that was a big unlocking for me as well in my journey. It took 20 plus years to figure out how to properly grieve, for me, grieve the loss of my mom. And one thing I learned at that point was what I needed was to acknowledge how I was feeling, no matter how I was feeling. So growing up, I felt like I could only show people that I was happy or mad because I was a boy, right? Like those were the rules. I wasn't allowed to be sad or any of these other emotions. Now, as an adult, it's like you can acknowledge you're having a bad day. I'm going to acknowledge that I'm having a bad day, and that's okay. And I've been through bad days before. I have the tools to move through it in the way that I need to. And once I gave myself permission to just exist in whatever state it was, it felt like an unlocking. And so what you said kind of like paralleled what I was thinking in that way. Is that similar to what you meant?
Yeah, it's like it's freedom,
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah,
know. And I think different from like the toxic positivity where it's like
I can't
it's
do that.
silver lining, da da da, you know, it's like that's not real. Life has, you know, I was in the mountains. I was like, wow, there is no flat here. It's either up or it's down. And sometimes that's life. And I think exactly honoring how you feel is important. And also there's the impermanence to that, and knowing you've been there. So I still am healing, and I get flare ups, and sometimes they last months. But the difference now is that I am not assigning meaning to every symptom for how long it's going to last and how restrictive it's going to be. It's more about, all right, this is it in this moment, and I've been here. I know this really well, and I've made it through in the past, and I know I can get through this, and being okay with sitting with it and taking, you know, that's a sign I need to take care of myself more and do a better job of that.
Not hide it, not shame
Yeah.
yourself for it. Just it is and it sucks. And
Yeah.
we'll move through it with the tools that I know how, or I will seek out new tools and just having that, like, yeah, like some of us go through periods of, depression and anxiety and all these elements. And sometimes it comes on and you don't even know why. And sometimes we're like, oh no, I need to be happy. And it's like makes it 10 times worse because you're trying to like pretend it's not there when really if you sit with it, or what I've learned, if I sit with it, I figure it out. So I'm really curious as to like when you started, because I know from a perfectionist mindset, I would imagine those first couple days, weeks, months were really challenging, were they, to like be really intentional with like the post-it notes and like really reframing things and feeling differently? Was that hard for you to move
I
into?
mean, to be honest, the whole thing was hard. I mean, I was doing meditation, I was journaling a ton and doing breath work. I mean, and I guess there was a part that was I was really curious too of what I might find, because it was all so new. I mean, I was like, I can't meditate. I don't sit still.
How do I
I
do it
think too
right?
much, blah blah blah. But I found Tara Brock, and she had great meditations, and she had a live group every Wednesday, still does. And I found hers really spoke to me, and I would listen to her class afterward, and it just kind of was like this little crack in the door that I was exploring. It's almost hard to articulate, but it was this little journey of one. I mean, I couldn't really do much. I was in bed most of the time, and so I was just like making it up, and I'd get up and have my tea and I'd journal, and then I would go and meditate, and then I'd go back in bed and I would try and visualize the life that I want and health. So it kind of was like a job of healing, a job of learning, a job of figuring out, you know, how to get through this. I'm on my own, I didn't have a doctor. I found a doctor who was amazing, but I also found a healer inside me in the meantime, and concurrently with with what I was doing with her. So
Would you say that journey was more like more you said exploring, you were exploring different things rather than maybe a previous version looking for a solution? Would that be true? Were you still like I need this will work, but
I
or more
know
open?
there's no bullets. I
Okay.
knew that. And I think that was part of my turning point, was I was looking outside of me for all these solutions and answers, and it was flipping that inward. And I'm a total nerd. I love research. So I did a ton of research too on like the biology of belief and the science of gratitude and intention and attention. I joined an intention masterclass, and I have an amazing group of people that years later we still meet to do intentions for people. But it was more of turning the lens inward. I'm the subject, and I'm the one that I'm researching. And along with researching, the science of the things that I'm putting into place and trying out. I mean, it was also experimentation, but I knew it was a collective, and I knew that I was a big piece of it because I had tried everything else before and it didn't work. So yeah, it was this interesting, it was such an antithesis to how I lived before, because I was all in motion and doing, and this was all about like going inward, which I think I probably ran from, you
Well,
know.
yeah. I mean, or you were like, like, oh, I'll find the solve for that later. But I don't know. I was just kind of like, as I'm picturing this, is it's more like what I'm picturing in this story is like you're trying something, seeing how it feels
Mhm.
inside, outside, all the pieces. Doesn't work. Going to put this to the side. I'm going to try this. That feels good. I'm going to keep doing that. I'm going to add this versus maybe the previous version of you would have approached that a little differently. Oh, this doesn't work. This sucks. I'm not going to try. Like, and this is more of an exploratory journey that you're going on. And I could totally be putting words in your mouth right now, so don't let me do that if I am. But
No, that's true.
it
Yeah.
feels like there was permission. Maybe permission is the right thing to like take on
Well, and
things, let
just
things go.
tuning in to
How you actually
give
feel.
this a try and see how it feels and what comes of it. And it was interesting because even with the meditations, there was an evolution where I liked the guided meditations, but then after a while, I tried some without being guided, and I got so much deeper. And I don't do guided meditation anymore. I was actually more like, oh, I want to do them on my own because I'm experiencing other things that I want to,
So growth,
experience. Yeah,
like,
exactly. And
yeah.
just this sense of I couldn't feel where I end and what around me begins, this kind of spaciousness that in some of hers I did feel, but I felt like I was growing
Yeah,
a little bit with
kind of like
it. It
training
was
wheels.
yeah, it was really, and I'm super into neuroplasticity and read about, the art of meditation is the coming back after you noticing the thought and then coming back is like a little push up for your brain.
Yeah. Did you find that as you were growing and kind of like your proof of concepts were like aligning and your things were working, that you were more able to kind of believe in yourself and what you could do? Like it was like a snowball kind of growing and growing, and then you're kind of grabbing it on and then changing your
Yeah.
life in that way?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's kind of, it's a little chicken and egg at times, because the belief in myself really helped the connection with myself, and the connection with myself helped the belief in myself, and the acceptance was kind of what tied it together, almost, now that I think about it. So, I didn't know what it meant when I was like, I'm going to believe in myself, you know, I'm going to believe that I can do this.
Because you had never done it.
I hadn't. I had done one other thing in my life that was a huge risk, and it turned out fine, and belief in myself. And then all the other ones were, there was always this like, hi, I'm doubt. I'm doubt. I'm here. I'm right here. So it was just this, try it out, see how it goes. And then, looking for the evidence to support belief in me, and that's that inner strength and belief that, my body is off the rails, but there is a healing intelligence in all of us, that if I can get my head to stop fighting with my body and questioning it, what a great team we would be. So it was really working hard on that, and the visualization of what I would be like to be healthy, and talking to my cells. They're always listening,
They're always there.
so yeah.
I think of this like healing, this beginning part of your healing journey, kind of like training camp. When did you start playing the games? Like, when did things start changing for you? Like, did it start helping you physically? And like, how did that journey unfold?
Yeah. So, I mean, that was winter of 2021, like early 2021. And I would say probably, I mean, at least a good 6 to 9 months of doing all this till I really started. I mean, I had moments where I would feel pretty good, and I could walk further. I had a new dog, so that gave me inspiration to move every day and to get out and to be in nature every day. So I would say it was kind of a slow coming out of the hole that was not linear. It was like most of life, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But like you say, Matt, I wouldn't be the person I am without it, without all of it that I went through. I like the person that I am now so much better than the person that I was. And I thought I was kind of a connected person then, and I really wasn't. So, yeah, it's just, and it's still unfolding. We're still evolving and growing, I
Yeah.
hope, you
Well,
know?
I mean, if we're lucky, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
think, you know, we look back on some of these things, and sometimes it's really hard in the moment. I'm sure when you were in that
So
kitchen
hard.
or wherever you were sitting, it was not a great moment. But at the same time, for this version of you,
Yeah.
it was a great moment. It was like a kick in the pants, a little tiny match light, whatever it may be. And it was your job to get more oxygen in the room to kind of get that fire going and turn into this version of you. And it's really hard in the moment to think, oh God, this moment is going to be like a pivotal one that's going to change us because it sucks.
Well, I mean, it did feel pivotal in the spirit of, wow, I had no idea that was the answer to that question. I had no idea that raw truth of that question. And I was like, wow, okay, there's no way I'm going to get better if that's the way I'm thinking. It's interesting because, are you familiar with Edith Eger?
I'm not.
She's amazing. She was in Auschwitz, pulled from a pile of dead bodies, almost dead herself. And she came back. She's a psychologist. She's amazing. She's like 90, I think. But she wrote a book called The Choice. And she said, the greatest prison is in your own mind, and in your pocket, you already hold the key. And I read that when I was in my own prison and realized that I was in my own prison. And I was like, wow. You know, you mentioned at the beginning a word or a phrase or a book can change somebody's life. And that was like, I felt so seen in that moment, because that was both illuminating the prison I felt I was in addition, like mentally, in addition to my physical limitations. But it also is this empowerment of, I have a choice. And that is, we all have a choice. And so much of my illness, I felt like I didn't have choices. I felt like all the doors around me closed, because that was the life that I wanted back. And I wanted to get back there. And it wasn't until I kind of was exploring this new open door to something different that I realized, okay, this is an opportunity. But if you told me at my depths that this is the best thing, I would have I would have hung up on you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have been like, you have no idea how, think about the sickest you've ever felt and multiply that by 9 months or a
Yeah.
year or years, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. And also, too, like, had you, I don't know, I sometimes think that, like, the 20 years that it took to grieve, like, I don't think it could have been any quicker for me. Like, I think I just needed to hit the little thing that knocked me into being like, okay, I should probably talk to a therapist now. And, like, all the things had to get in line for me to hit the point where I was ready, or where I was, there's a book called The Noticer by Andy Andrews, I think. And it was one book that I read. It might be a little religious, but I'm not religious. And it was really about flipping the perspective of
Yeah.
things, and the way
Yeah.
you were talking about, like, your mountain biking and stuff like that. And it was really something that sat with me, and I shared it with so many people. And it was around that time in which I was like, man, there's this guilt and shame that comes with the time that I spent being that way. Did you face anything similar to where you were like, man, I wish I would have thought of this 10 years ago, or
Yeah.
any
I mean,
piece that
there were
comes
a
with that?
lot of these like, listen, listen, listen,
And you were like,
signals.
no.
And I was like, nope, bursting through. I'm just going. And I think, had I listened to those, what would be different now? I think I had to be beaten over the head by a 2x4 and completely leveled to get to that place. I mean, I started dabbling outside of conventional medicine because I didn't have any answers in conventional medicine. And so I was kind of opening up. I'd never been a spiritual person. And I was kind of like, and I went to a medical astrologist, and he said, you are on a path you don't want to be, like, you need to slow down, you need qigong. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'm not into that stuff. And then couple years later, I'm doing private qigong sessions with my acupuncturist, and I love it. But I resisted it because I wanted to identify as that person. All my friends were in the bike community, my husband and I shared it. That was a big part of my identity, and all the achievements with my work, all part of it. And so, when you lose all that and it's all stripped
Strip
away,
bare, yeah.
then it's like, okay, you don't have all that. Who are you? When you ask somebody and you meet them for the first time, usually it's, what do you do? What are your labels? I was just talking to a client about this today. We love labels, because it makes it easy to know, I know all about Matt. Matt's a podcaster. Matt's had this experience with grief and da, da. But but you're so much more than that. And we're so much more than the labels. And that's something that is rare to find in people who haven't had as big of a journey. I haven't found that in a lot of, a lot of my casual conversations, even with close friends. I have a couple that I can talk to at like a deeper level, but a lot of people haven't experienced so much loss in their life that has changed them. And I think there's a difference there.
Yeah. And you had like 4 big life-altering moments in a row, probably more, right?
I had more.
Yeah. So you had
That
a
was the
lot,
short
and
version.
you
Yeah.
probably weren't processing all of those in a healthy way, even the happy ones.
I
True?
was My wedding was survival. I was actually
Coasting.
really sick at my wedding, and it was like, do my makeup, help me.
Just one of those could knock someone off
Yeah.
their axis a little, and we are
Yeah.
not taught, or we're not, maybe better now, but I don't think in general we were taught to process, to accept, to acknowledge, to move through, to all the things, to process each of those so that we can, when we come to the next one, we have a couple more tools and we know how to approach that one. But when you're just kind of pushing them all down, it just gets worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, and I was already really depleted from my career because I'm an empath. So I'm giving to patients. So I had nothing for myself. And so when I was grieving and going through, and the 3 months with my mom was extremely traumatic. The pain of watching her, it was actually more despair she had than pain. And to see her body not giving up, even though she wanted to leave this world, the every day, it was gutted me every day. And I was trying to, be there for her and do all the, manage all the medications and medical stuff. And it was too much for where I was in my life. And fortunately, I had a good friend who went through it with her dad, and we would be on the phone. But I'm in California. I live in Washington. I don't have my dog. I don't have my husband. I don't have any, friends. So it was this world that was my dad, my mom, and me.
Hmm.
And it was like everything else outside of it. I was envisioning when you talked about the memorial and the wake, and just, it's almost surreal. So going through these months, it was just this like other world, that we were so detached from the larger world, and it was like survival, every day.
Yeah. No, I my grandmother was sick and I dealt with those last couple months and stayed by her side in the last 5 days of her life, and I understand that. I fortunately, in my circumstance, because I had found the tools that worked for me grieving my mom and my grandmother got sick a couple years later, I knew what I needed
Yeah.
to do because
Yeah.
I had that ability to like actually process it and feel like a full human again
Yeah.
and know, okay, I know how bad this is going to be. I know what I didn't get to do. So I'm going to approach this in the healthiest way for me and for my grandmother to make it as beautiful as it can be, as hard as it is.
Yeah.
So I was fortunate in that way.
Yeah.
But we don't,
Yeah.
unless you go through it, I don't know that you get the tools until after, right? Like,
No.
and
Yeah.
so when we were talking about you having these little voices years ago,
Hmm.
had you listened, you probably wouldn't be this version of you because you wouldn't have dug so deep. You wouldn't have tried so wide. Like
Yeah.
all the things that you did because of that moment, you were stripped bare and you could build the house of Heidi as in any direction that you wanted, right? Like you
Yeah.
really could because there was no other options really
Yeah.
to kind
And
of
then
explore.
stepping out of my comfort zone. I mean, it's so funny because before old Heidi, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be in front of a camera. I mean, I didn't want to have a wedding because I didn't want to be the center of attention. And so I feel like this whole journey has been to get me where I am right now. and live in my purpose. And it's been so clear. Yeah, I've become this kind of a spiritual person as a byproduct. I never set out to be on a spiritual journey, but I do feel like everything in my life has led me to this moment, and this is what I should be doing. I know it sounds so cliche, but
You don't know it
it's
until it happens to you. Like,
it's such a knowing. It's there's such a clarity. And I'm doing improv, I'm doing Toastmasters. I would never do that. I used to hide in my closet as a kid because my parents signed me up for drama class, and I didn't want to go. I didn't want to go. And they'd have to like pull me out of the closet and throw me in the car. And now it's like I'm choosing this. This is crazy,
yeah, because
but
there's no
it feels
downside.
right. Yeah. I'm and when you get out of your comfort zone, it builds that trust in yourself. It's like I can do hard things, whether it's riding my bike or it's being in an improv class and having to sing a song in front of 20 people that I'm making up and a rap or whatever, and it's just there's so many surprises, I
Yeah.
guess,
It's would you say that you've with this version of you now is there's like a new definition of good or good enough?
You mean in to replace perfectionism, you mean?
Yeah, like where that came from is I'm thinking, okay, I could go to improv and like quote unquote bomb, but that's okay. Did I have fun? Was it a great experience? Whereas a perfectionist version of me would be like, oh, I can never do that again because I was horrible and I'll never be on Saturday Night Live and like all the pieces. So I'm wondering if you see the word good or good enough differently now.
Well, in terms of perfectionism, good enough versus perfect. And it's also adjusting my expectations. So being really aware, am I trying to do this to be good enough, or am I trying to seek that bar that I'll never reach? And so I have this little check-in with myself about my expectations.
Yeah, that's good.
And I also have a list on the weekend of a million things, and I'm like, cut that in half and pick three, and that's it. Because I will let myself down if I don't get to half of the things. But then I'm like, big picture, does it really matter? You didn't get to vacuuming. Okay, no big deal. I'd rather go ride my bike. So
And
the
buy a
house
Roomba.
isn't as clean. Right.
It'll do it for you while you're gone riding your bike.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
curious if 2025, Heidi, if you could go
Hmm.
back to right before you asked yourself that question that
Hmm.
day, is there anything that you living this version of your life would want to tell that version of you?
I think it would be to start sooner, like stop seeking and go try to find the answers inside you. I think I spent a ton of money and years on doctors that I believe they're all doing the best they can. I just don't think they weren't looking for what actually is going on. So I think believing in myself that there is a capacity in me to heal, and find that. And when you do find the right doctor, you're going to be an amazing team, and it's going to supercharge my healing. And I think so many people in my situation they spend hundreds of thousands of dollars over long years. They lose support. And that's a narrative in our culture that we're conditioned to seek medicine outside of ourselves, but realize there's a lot inside of us that we can heal. And it's in here, and it's believing in that and the messages. I think there's a lot of people who spontaneously heal from visualization and belief and placebo and all of that. So I think do the work, but it's so much easier to just seek it outside yourself, because then you're not having to do that inner work.
Yeah. I'd probably also tell her to slow down.
I would tell her to slow down. I would tell her to slow down. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Like,
think we all could use that every once in a while, a reminder that we don't have to do it all and that we are human.
yeah. And I think that's, to me, I was thinking that was living. And now it's like, this is living. I used to, I feel so bad. I used to, like, my dog would sniff and I'd be like, nope, that's unproductive sniffing. You're not going to the bathroom. Let's go, let's go, let's go. We're running, we're doing everything. And I feel really bad about that. And now I stop and sniff flowers and watch bees and hummingbirds. And my dog just kind of sits there and waits for me. And I let her sniff too. I just feel much more connected versus getting as much out of life as I can. I think there's a different mindset.
It's really
Yeah.
like stop and smell the roses. Like at this,
Yeah.
like, and
Yeah.
as cheesy as that sounds, it's like we all need a little reminder that we don't have to do it all. We were never
Mhm.
asked to do it all.
Yeah.
And somehow we assumed that we were supposed to do it all because that's
Mhm.
a fulfilled life. And it sounds like you found a little bit different of a journey that is really helping you feel like a full being, as you described yourself.
Yeah.
I think it's a beautiful journey, and I'm happy that you are on this healing journey. Is there more healing to do? Of course. We're all, right? We're all trying. Like I said earlier, these conversations heal me in ways that I never expected. So,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing yours in this way.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity, Matt.
Well, if there are people that want to, like, they heard your story, they resonate so much with what you're doing, or maybe just feel inspired by what you're doing, what's the best way to like find you, get in your orbit, talk to you, tell you their story? Like, how do they find Heidi?
Unshakableme.com. And that's one word. I've got a lot of free resources. There's a get in touch, or you can schedule a free Zoom call. I'm also on YouTube, Unshakable Me, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn.
You're everywhere.
I'm in a lot of places.
We
Yeah.
will send the links. I really encourage anyone that if even just something that was not about Heidi's life shift moment, but something that she said resonated with you, and whether she wants this or not, I tell you to reach out to her and share your story, because I think there's so much power in telling our stories, right? Like for the person telling it, but also for those of us that get to hear other people's stories. Just never know what's going to hit us in certain ways. So please reach out to Heidi and connect with her. You're
Thanks so
okay with
much,
that?
Matt. I'd love it. Yeah. I think, yeah, you're not alone. And
No.
whatever journey, we're all on different journeys, but I think there's such a shared narrative.
Agreed.
We're just, living it in different ways.
You're
So,
not alone, and
yeah.
we all, when we're deep in these moments, we feel very alone, and we feel that there is no one out there that can understand. And then once we have a little bit more awareness, we realize that, like you said, the narrative or the actual stories might be a little different, but the way that we feel, the way that we connect with others and ourselves, is very
Hmm.
similar. So
Yeah. Yeah.
thank you again for being a part of this journey. Thank you all for listening. And with that, I'm going to say goodbye, and I'll be back next week with a brand new episode. Thanks again, Heidi.
Thanks, Matt.
For more information, please visit www.thelifeshiftpodcast.com.